Hello everybody, Tyrone the God 3 here, and welcome to a new segment that I'll be trying to do every Friday, or at least trying, called the FanFic Friday section. And what this is basically going to be is going to go over the fanfic idea that I announced on Twitter a couple of weeks ago, known as Pokemon Universe. Pokemon Universe is a fanfic I actually have been working at for a long time, but it took till now to actually start putting it into action. I've been actually writing this fanfic since the Unova region. However, I had to make rewrites several different times, all the way up to the point where the Kalos region that came out, and I had to make some adjustments. Granted, the anime nor the video game continuity has any effect here on the Pokemon universe, but a lot of the things that happen in Pokemon Universe were dictated on what regions and generations were already out in Pokemon. In order to make Trent's team, I tried to reflect upon a lot of the Pokemon that happened in all 6 gens, and I figured having 6 gens now would make for a perfect time in order to make the fanfic. This is to be noted for if they do make a Gen 7, 8, 9, 10, or onwards, so I'm going to take that into account when making this video. Maybe months or years from now, this will probably be out of date, and there'll only be 6 generations of Pokemon rather than the generations that are later in the future. But enough of that said, I'm going to be discussing this topic in several different sections in order to go about Pokemon Universe episodes that will happen on Friday. Well, they won't really be episodes. They'll more or less be me doing a review of the summary of each of the episodes that I've already written in the Pokemon universe, and I'll be going over what the plot details of each episode is and the writing process that I went through when making said episode, as well as several different themes that I point out in the episode, and just little things like that. I'll probably end up rambling because it's my project. It's a thing that I created, but it is a fan fiction series and should be treated as such. I'm going to go ahead and do disclaimers now. The Pokemon universe, that's going to be so weird to say, is in no connections to any of the prior Pokemon games and or anime continuity. Any characters from previous series will not be mentioned here except for Nurse Joy and Officer Jenny, only because those are characters that can pretty much remain staple in any universe of Pokemon. Nurse Joy and Officer Jenny are staple characters, and I couldn't honestly find any replacements for them, so I went ahead and just made them the generic nurse and cop of the Pokemon universe. Since those are two very non-stapled, positions in the Pokemon world, I decided to go ahead and keep them for their situations. However, there will be an episode that focuses particularly on a certain Officer Jenny that I've decided to make as a character, but that won't happen until much later in the series. I haven't even written that episode yet. As of current, Pokemon Universe has about 35 episodes in the first season. Yes, I've made the writing for each of the chapters of Pokemon come out more or less like an episode. I did this because I have the strong belief, although it's a disbelief that it may happen, but I do have a strong belief that this has the potential to be a series if given the right, budget. So I decided to go ahead and put them all in episode format. Not sure exactly when I will be able to show you all the scripts for each of the episodes that I make, but rest assured if I do, I'll probably put them on Mediafire as available things to download, and then put the download link in the description of each episode. So rest assured that will happen in the distant future. But for now, I'll go ahead and discuss the plot of each of the episodes I've written every Friday, and then I even wrote a script in the process of writing a script for the Pokemon Universe movie, which I won't reveal the title just as of yet, but it's like a what if the way things are going in the plot of the series, what if I made a movie based on this fanfiction, which is based off a already popular franchise. So, without further ado, let's go into Pokemon Universe Episode 1, Troublemaker Trent, The Journey Begins. Now, as you can see on this thumbnail I've made, these aren't the staple designs for the characters, obviously, because you can see that this is Ethan, or Gold, from the Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver series, or the Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal series. I decided to just put him here as a small little thumbnail sprite to represent Trent. I have no artwork or idea of what Trent would look like. So if any artist out there from like DeviantArt or Twitter or anything want to help make designs for Trent, then go right ahead. I'm fully down for you all drawing the designs, and if I like them, then I'll point them out and I'll probably mention them in further videos. So without further ado, that is what I'm doing as far as sprites. None of these sprites are the staple designs for the characters. These are things that I just thought of that I could put really fast to represent the thumbnail of events that are happening, and they'll more than likely stay just that, thumbnailed events. I have no complete artwork of any of the characters done. I've simply just written the script of the story and how the story's gone about for the first 35 episodes, and will continue because this will be a 100 episode series. So, episode 1, Troublemaker Trent. The episode begins with Trent's mother. Her name is Marley, and yes, having Marley's name as a thing is very recognizable in the series because she is reoccurring. I'm just not going to say when. Marley ends up waking Trent going on about the history of the region that they're in. Now, this is where we get the region that the Pokemon universe takes place in. It's known as the Gaeza region. Why Gaeza? Well, I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, but Gaeza in Japanese means to gather, and that follows the theme of Pokemon universe. You see, the Gaeza region is known for having all Pokemon from all different types of regions. Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, Sinnoh, Unova, and Kalos. They have Pokemon from all different areas of the region in large numbers. And a long time ago, the Gaeza region was actually uninhabitable by humans and mostly was contained of Pokemon from every different part of the world. Something in the Gaeza region is a source that brings all of the Pokemon to migrate to the Gaeza region when they need to migrate to a highly populated Pokemon-like area. However, humans and Pokemon have been able to live in the Gaeza region together, but large amounts of Pokemon exist within the Gaeza region. No new Pokemon, just a bunch of Pokemon from several different areas that are native from other areas. Trent gets annoyed by this history explanation as he wakes up from his bed, but he completely forgets that today is the day his Pokemon journey starts. Now, I know what you're thinking. 10-year-old starting off on a journey? I was not really a fan of the whole 10-year-old starting a journey thing, so I decided to bump Trent's age up to 2 more years. Trent's 12 years old when he starts his journey off as a Pokemon trainer. As Trent goes off to start his journey as a Pokemon trainer, he runs off, escaping his mother's clutches, because Marley I've put off as a very attached mother, much like how Delia Ketchum was at the beginning of Pokemon when she was overprotective of Ash. So I decided to make Marley more of that character for comedic purposes. She basically smothers Trent in a giant I'll miss you hug, but Trent is able to pry himself out so that he can head to Professor Sator's lab. Yes, that's the professor's name, by the way. And yes, his name is following the trend of the other professors, and he is being named off of a tree, the Sator tree. When Trent finally makes it to the lab, he ends up with a running joke calling Professor Sator an old man, and Professor Sator constantly corrects him by saying he's not an old man. His official age, I want to say, is about 28, if I'm not mistaken. I'll probably correct that in an annotation or something. Anyway, when Professor Sator leads Trent in order to gain his first Pokemon and get his Pokemon license as well as Pokedex and Pokeballs, we get to see that there's a large list of Pokemon, all dating all the way from the Kanto region to the Kalos region, leaving a grand total of 18 Pokemon, and Trent gets to pick one of them in order to start off his journey. However, Trent is a bit on the rash and disrespectful side. He's also very impatient. Trent's thing about picking a starter Pokemon and his conflict with it is the fact that all of them look terribly weak. He doesn't know the process of training a Pokemon up in order for it to get stronger so that they can become stronger. And because of this, he downright insults each of the starter Pokemon to the point where Charmander uses an ember on his face and burns it comedically. He gets mad and throws a fit and, goes out on his own way. And Professor Sator basically concludes that Trent is unfit to be a Pokemon trainer and denies Trent the chance to get his Pokemon license. It's at this point that Professor Sator also learns that Trent is the son of the Pokemon champion of the Gaeza region known as Joseph. Now, was this a really fanfic-y like move to make the main character the son of the champion? Yes and no. However, I was wrestling on this, and I went ahead and decided to go ahead and make this a thing, because later in the, well, more or less in the story, we see that Joseph, which is the name of Trent's father, who's the champion, is going to be the drive for Trent in order to become stronger. He's the whole reason he starts the journey in the first place, and he wants to be respected within his town. I forgot to mention the setting. The town that this takes place in is a place known as Cherryville Town. The name is just me combining a fruit with a village. Yeah, it's not really original, but it was the only thing I could think of at the time in order to make the hometown. Trent gets mad at the fact that he's constantly being compared to his father because his father set really high standards for Trent's behavior as a upcoming Pokemon trainer. Due to this, he throws a fit and runs out into the Cherryville forest because he's mad that he was denied his chance to become a Pokemon trainer. Once he's sobbing in the forest for a while and he's all upset, he ends up getting greeted by a Pichu who sees him upset. Pichu ends up offering Trent an apple because, this Pichu in particular has a really kind heart. It was the offer of the apple that Trent started to really open up to this particular Pichu because of its act of kindness. No one has ever shown Trent an act of kindness before other than his own mother. It's at this point that Trent goes ahead and decides to suck it up and head back to Cherryville so he can head home. But when that happens, Pichu runs off and tries to get an apple for himself. He ends up knocking over a tree, which causes the vibrations, and a bunch of Kakuna get disturbed. And when Kakuna get disturbed, you know what that means. Beedrill. Beedrill swarm in and start to attack Pichu. They do a bunch of poison things on Pichu and cause Pichu to fall over. Pichu tried to fight them off, but he can't. So he ends up getting poisoned and ends up getting hurt by the Beedrill. Trent sees all of this happening, and Trent then panics trying to figure out how to save Pichu from the imminent threat. He then remembers that his mom packed a bunch of Pokemon food for him that he could travel with on his Pokemon journey, and ends up throwing the Pokemon food in a separate direction as the attack. The Beedrills pick up on the scent of this and fly off in order to eat the food so that they can get away from Pichu, but Pichu's still left injured in Cherryville Forest. Since Trent knows that he can't leave Pichu here, he decides to go ahead and pick Pichu up and head back to Cherryville Town. Meanwhile, we cut back to Professor Sator's lab, where Professor Sator tries to get the contact information for Trent so that he can go ahead and inform Trent's mother that Trent has ran off. However, he does see an email that was placed today, and the email is basically from Trent's father, Joseph. Joseph basically pleads with Professor Sator to give Trent a chance in order to become a Pokemon trainer, regardless of his rude, impatient, and rash actions, because the standards for him becoming a Pokemon trainer have been set way too high due to Joseph being a champion. It is also due to the fact that all of these events taking place, he isn't around to be a father to Trent a lot, and feels that his Pokemon journey for Trent will be a chance for him not only to grow as a Pokemon trainer, but as a person, and make him more respectful towards people and Pokemon. After Professor reads this, he puts Trent into consideration. Just then, Trent bursts into the lab and asks Professor Sator to heal Pichu from his severe poison and injuries. Once all this is said and done, he explains to Professor Sator exactly what happened in Cherryville Forest and how he got that Pichu from the condition that it was in. Professor Sator shows that he's grown a little bit more respect from Trent since earlier this morning when he tried to start his Pokemon journey. After this, Professor Sator decides to finally go ahead and give Trent his Pokemon license, Pokédex, and Pokéballs, so that Trent can officially start his Pokemon journey. Once that's all said and done, the two actually get along on a better level now, and Trent decides to choose a Pokemon. Although Trent still comically thinks these Pokemon are very weak looking, but decides to suck it up and go ahead and pick one of them as his starter. Before Trent even has the chance to pick one of the Pokemon as his starter, Pichu rushes in and is very happy now that he's all healed up. He hugs Trent and is very grateful to Trent for all of his actions that he done. It's at this point that Professor Sator has finally picked out the fact that Pichu has chosen Trent to be a worthy person to be the Pokemon trainer because of the bond that they grew in Cherryville Forest. It's at this point that it's confirmed officially that Pichu wants Trent to be his Pokemon trainer. Trent uses one of the 6 Pokeballs that Professor Sator gives him, captures Pichu, and Pichu is successfully caught. With that all said and being done, they all decide to leave the lab, and Pichu and Trent stare off into the cliff. Once they do this, Trent vows that he'll become the best Pokemon trainer ever and become champion of the Gaeza region and surpass his own father. With Pichu at his side, the journey is officially begun for Trent, and our journey begins. Looking back on this episode, this is actually one of the shortest episodes script-wise because there's not a lot of characters in it, and even more so for the episode after, episode 2. And this episode, I needed to find a way in order for Trent to get his first Pokemon that wasn't so related to the first episode of the official Pokemon anime, where Ash saved his Pikachu from a bunch of different Spearow. I decided to go ahead and let Trent be the arrogant, brash, disrespectful trainer so that the Pokemon journey can help him grow as a person. Now, when writing this episode, there was a lot of things I had to take into account. Episode 1 to me is actually one of the hardest episodes to write, ironically, even though it was done with the least amount of dialogue and like settings and stuff, and things get more elusive as the series goes out. But episode 1, I had to make sure I had to make it an open-ended episode so that I can leave plenty of room for things to actually happen later on in the series. There was nothing that I could pretty much set in stone here, and I had to take into consideration what's going to happen within the rest of the series. There's even things that have caught me by surprise, even while I was writing this episode and writing episodes for the series in the future, where I stopped and thought, will this work, or will this affect any plans that I had for Trent or any of the other characters later? Like, will these things shape out as well as I want them to, or will they fall apart? The character of Trent was a hard character to make in general because I needed to make a Pokemon trainer that wasn't too goody two-shoes, but wasn't just a straight-up arrogant jerk like Silver or Gary or anything. I wanted to have him have some form of a moral, and his moral is if someone does something right to me, then I will do right for them. It's a moral that he follows because not a lot of people really treat Trent with respect. I want to say, and I hate to compare him to this character, not because don't have anything against this character, it's a weird way to compare this character. I would like to compare Trent more or less to Naruto, in the sense that they both have successful fathers, but they were both disrespected by the town that they're in, and they both pull pranks and are rash and, very impatient at the start, but learn to grow much better later. The journey more or less works out for Trent, and I wanted to make Trent a character that wasn't too stale, because the plot involved more than just Trent. Although Trent is the main character, the plot revolves around a lot of other characters, and if Trent ends up getting outclassed by a lot of the characters, then the series would just be awkward, because we got a main character that we barely care about, accompanied by a lot of characters that have very interesting plot lines and backstories and things like that, because there are 2 other characters that Trent travels with, which I won't reveal as of right now, but I didn't want to go ahead and... I know one of the characters that Trent travels with has quite a backstory going for that particular person, and I didn't want that to completely overthrow Trent's storyline. So I needed to make a character that was more or less novice, but still not stale. I didn't want him to be a goody two shoes. Heavens no. I didn't want to make him like Red from Origins, who was just way too good, but I didn't want to make him like Blue or Gary or Green from Origins and make him like this jackass. So that was the writing when it came to the characters. Now I know a lot of people are going to point at Pichu because Pichu is just way too nice. And Pichu has its overall character. I want to say Pichu's a very cute character at the start, but several things are going to happen with Pichu later in the future that'll make Pichu a very dependable companion for Trent. And I want to say the Pokemon helped Trent grow as much as he helps them grow, because it's up to the trainers to help the Pokemon grow as Pokemon, but it's up to the Pokemon sometimes to have their personalities rub off on the characters. And I definitely wanted that here with this situation. I wanted Pichu to be more or less like the kind of like the Pichu's the goody two shoes in this situation, and it really helps. But overall, that's it for episode 1, Troublemaker Trent, The Journey Begins. The next episode I will do next Friday. I will talk about next Friday. I'll do the writing process, the review, and all of that. The episode will be episode 2, Rival Cass and the Thieving Hoot Hoot. I'll see you all then, everybody. If you all liked this series, then let me know on Twitter or on the comments. Should I continue it? I'll see you all then, everybody. Tyrone the God 3.